Here again, and today I'm excited to tell you that I'm gonna start using Stryker again with Rain, because hallelujah, he was actually nerfed a little bit in a slightly understandable way, so that he's not as horrifically exploitable of a Kameo, not an absolute clutch. Still very strong in my opinion, but now his biggest strength, these grenades, are more of a case-by-case, useful, overpowered tech, rather than something that you would do literally every time it's your turn, whether it's on block, on combo, on literally any time just standing there. If they get hit by the grenades and you go in for a full combo, it was just so stupid, and I think using him actually made me worse at the game when I was using him, but now that it's something that you have to think about a little bit more, I think he's far more enjoyable of a Kameo. So in this video, we're going to talk about the main ways that you use Stryker in case you need some Stryker tech, and now that it's actually cool. So the first three things are going to include the grenades, so you're going to have to adjust how much you want to do these. It's not something you do every time you get a combo or a knockdown. It's something that I would consider tech, because in my head, tech is not your bread and butter, your BMB. It's something that you do every now and then to get more damage or get some cheeky knockdown that'll, catch the opponent off guard and make your gameplay a little bit more variable, rather than something you're constantly doing. So although these are good options and they're great, you won't be doing them every time, and think about it, okay? Now the first piece of the tech is the most obvious, it's the classic, it's do some buttons, and then bring out your Kameo halfway through, doing it pretty similar to when Cyrax days were. So we just do a string like this, and then you go into the projectile, and then you dash cancel the projectile, and on hit, it goes into a full combo, so with pretty decent damage, and on block, the grenades can kind of cover you, and you can go for some mix. You can go for some stuff like this, where you kind of just keep mixing up because the opponent can't tell when the grenades are coming out, or even if you just go into the regular sequence again. Cancel the overhead into a throw. There's a lot of obvious mix there. Of course, you can even throw in the low, which on hit will also, of course, lead into the combo. Very, very easy to do, particularly after the 2-1-1 string. A lot of his other strings, like 1-1 and forward 2-1, are a little bit harder to do because you have to do the back Kameo directly after the first button, which can be a little bit hard after a forwards too. But as you can see here, it is possible, just maybe a little bit more difficult than off of this, which you can do pretty leniently with almost any timing, as long as you press Stryker just a little bit after the first two hits. 1-1 is also a little bit easier because you can press back and 1 at the same time, unlike forward 2, but just do be careful that it pushes the opponent quite a far way away, 1-1, so there is a chance that maybe the opponent may be a little bit too far to get hit, because as you can see, if you are too far, the first Stryker grenade will hit slightly later and the opponent can actually block, so unfortunately it's a little finicky. You can only do it when you're a little bit closer, but at least it's slightly easier to do. So if you're trying to get a combo from a punish or something, the opponent has done something that you could need a 7-frame punish for, then this will be an easy go-to. Now, this combo, I recommend you go for it, and then you go for an extension by spending meter like this. Because anything to make the combo longer is going to be more beneficial for you. Of course, it's going to be more damage, but with the Stryker's increased recovery, or recovery time, doing a longer combo means by the time you're done, he's going to be more recovered. So by the time you do that full combo, as you saw, he was about half recovered. Throw a projectile, do a little fake zoning, and he'll be back before you know it. But unfortunately, it does still take quite a bit of time now. So that's the first piece of tech. It's really good for just giving you some general, easy, brainless pressure, the stuff we know about ambush Kameos. You can do things on block or on hit, and you've got lots of options. There's other potential for other mix-ups, like going for a low here while the opponent's blocking and they can't tell that you've cancelled into the low or something like that. And then, you can also combo from the overhead. So there's lots of potential with this stuff, and I'm sure you've seen lots of combos, because this is classic ambush stuff. And it's just as powerful as ever, just not as common as ever now. Now, tip 2, you can also extend your combos partway through them. So with the combo we were doing before, you kind of use Stryker as a way of going into a combo and as pressure, but as you saw there, you can also use him as a way of extending the end of your combo to get a decent amount of extra damage. Usually a simple combo like this is just going to lead to about 320 or something. If we go for the optimal, yeah, 310. But if you add in a cheeky Stryker, you get some more damage and some really good Oki from this. You can get even a little bit more damage by changing the combo like this. And yeah, that's pretty good damage compared to what we normally get. With that, you get kind of 40% with a very, very easy combo to execute. Now, in order to do this, you just want to press forwards and Stryker right as you press jump 2. So really easy to time, nothing tricky or weird, you just do it at the same time you press the button, but make sure that you do jump 2 a little bit late, particularly after your down back 1 launcher, because you want to make sure that you're close to the opponent, because if I do my jump 2 early there, as you can see, I'm not close enough and the grenades aren't close enough. So you want to really delay your jump 2 so that you're really close to the opponent. And then you can cancel that string in the air, by the way, into any grounded special move. So I like to cancel into a whirlpool or a projectile that comes a little bit meaty and can catch people trying to jump or do, like, get out of the whirlpool. If you're in the corner or closer to the corner, that string is really good on Knockdown as an ender, because you can just dash up and get a really meaty overhead, so it actually leads to quite good Oki. And if you just want damage, then just do this same string again into the geysers for some classic Oki, but a little bit more damage. This way of extending combos is easier because you don't have to do anything special at the beginning of the combo, you can just do it whenever you like, but as you can see, Stryker's recovery cage is a lot lower at the end of the combo because you used him a lot closer to the end of it. So it adds damage really easily, but it will be a little bit more spending and wasteful of your Kameo meter. The third thing you can do with Stryker grenades is, of course, use them for situational Oki. If you're fighting against a character or someone that you really want to hold down and keep your turn against, because they're just really threatening to you in neutral, then using grenades after certain knockdowns is going to be useful. So say after my throw here, I can call out the grenades so that they're hitting him as they wake up. That's a bit of a simple, obvious one. Of course, you can also do it off of a down 2 or anything like that. Like anything that launches the opponent away and you really don't want them to run away because maybe they zone you out really well, like Reiko or something. That's a pretty good way of locking them down. And those are kind of simple, obvious things, but there is more specific tech as well, like using 1-1 and summoning Stryker, then both the grenades hit the opponent and that breaks armor attacks. So if I show Johnny going for a wake up here, we'll do that. So Johnny's waking up with his extremely fast enhanced shadow kick. If I do this string, as you can see, both of the grenades hit the opponent because they hit perfectly in the way that both grenades hit the opponent. See, if you slightly mess it up, only one will hit and they'll beat you up with their armored attack. Now, why this is useful is you can do it off of basically any string, just make sure you do a really deep 1-1, and when you press the second one, so like 1-1, that's when you summon Stryker. So the timing is also pretty easy. And if you do it correctly, that means you just get to go for some, you know, super guaranteed Oki. Whether you break armored attacks and go for whirlpools, which I'm somehow messing up here. Or you can, you know, go for some tricky stuff, go in for overheads or lows. And all will generally lead to a combo. Just having that kind of guaranteed pressure where you know you have plus frames, you know the opponent can't wake up. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool having that guaranteed stuff. And if you're doing the whirlpool setup, then that will also catch people doing delayed wake ups because that will also hit them. Like that. And I like this because this is something you can do off of any of your launchers. Like off of back 2, some other tech that Rain has, like with Sub-Zero for example, can't be done. But because all this requires is a simple 1-1, as long as you do the dash correctly, you can get this off of anything. So there's some really cool Oki you can get from Stryker's grenades. Now the last two pieces of tech are obviously going to involve using the other two Kameo moves that Stryker has, because now that his Kameo moves are kind of weighted differently. Using the grenades is a little bit more, you know, resourceful. It uses a lot more of his Kameo gauge because it's going to take a lot more time for it to come back. You might find yourself using a lot more of this, like arrest or this overhead low interesting Kameo mix. And they are useful tools, but before, when you had the option for this exact same amount of meter going for this ridiculous grenades, people would always just do that. So let's start with tip 4, the overhead low mix. Pretty simply enough, up Kameo is an overhead, so anytime you have a low in your string, pop that. Very hard to react to. Good stuff. Rain has a few lows in his strings, like 114, ends in a low, 421 is a low. So anytime you go for these things, you have the opportunity for just going for an overhead, and this one is very +6. So if I am going for some simple strings like this, I just get to a lot of continued pressure, and combine that with the fact that now your pressure is a lot more variable with stuff like this, where they don't know if you're going to throw grenades, like perhaps they think you're going to be going for these combos, they don't know where to mash, and the fact that you can also just go for stuff like this makes your pressure a lot more interesting than what it usually is, which is this. Because now you can go for overheads, you can go for projectile cancels, you can go for actual projectile cancels that go into combos or plus frames. And not only is it just mix of will you press buttons or not press buttons, it's will you press buttons and are they going to be an overhead or a low. And this overhead leaves you really close, so you know you can dash up for a throw and go for other buttons a lot more easily. The low is a little different. It reaches a lot further, it is slower, and it is also less plus on block, which sounds like it's kind of worse, but it does have a lot longer of a knockdown, +54. The other one's pretty plus as well, but nothing like gargantuous. +54 is pretty crazy. You can go for a projectile that's so meaty that it's like plus if you feel like it. It's pretty cool. Of course, Rain doesn't have too many overheads in his kit, except for forward 3, which if you feel like being cheeky, instead of going forward 3-2, you can just go forward 3 into the low. That's going to catch a lot of people because they're not going to expect it, and it does review relatively close enough for a micro dash. But keep in mind, this is only +1, so it's a lot harder to jail into things up to this. So if I am using it in pressure, like up in this string, like to pretend to, you know, switch the overhead for a low, it's only +2. And the only thing I can really get guaranteed here is my down 1, and there's a chance that even that might miss. So just be careful with this one, it's a lot less guaranteed of pressure, so if you really want to make sure that you have plus frames, the overhead version is a lot better than that. But it doesn't mean the low version is useless, because, for example, you get pushed so far away that certain strings that do like push you away, you can use that, and like look at all that pushback now, I'm really far away from the opponent. Or I can do stuff like this, where I'm so far away from the opponent they might think that they have to dash in, and then they get caught by the low while they're dashing in to try and get their punish. Even from like really far things like this, there's probably not much that the opponent can do button-wise, at least most characters, so you can throw that out, and it just reaches really far. And if you do hit the opponent with it, because you know, it's a cool move and it's a low, it might catch some people, especially if you're using it as mix, you're +54, so you've got some options. Against most characters, fortunately not Johnny, this is kind of a time that you can throw out a whirlpool, and it's meaty enough that the opponent can't jump out, they can't press buttons or interrupt you. It's meaty, it just will get punished by armor attacks like Johnny's. So anyone that has an extremely fast forwards flying armor attack, which is basically Johnny DLC characters, so Peacemaker and Omni-Man, characters like that, maybe don't do this because they can very easily react to it. But characters like Katana or even Reptile, who does have a forward moving armor attack, it's just a little slower. You can just use this as a way to go for your low. You can take some plus frames and stuff, and because you're plus, then you can mash when you're down 3 or whatever. It's just cool having more opportunities to go for the low. It catches people trying to jump out, so if they think that they can, then you will get a full combo. And like I mentioned before, another option is going for your projectile, which can be so plus that it's like +5 if you time it correctly. Or you can, you know, just summon a portal and then go for some regular pressure if you don't feel like doing anything fancy. And go for some meaties, forward 2s or something. you know, pretty easy. Or, you know, you have so much time, you can actually safely jump over the opponent and then go for pressure. You just really have a lot of time to do whatever you want, basically. And yeah, these do not have the increased Stryker cooldown, so if you do use them, and then you manage to get a combo afterwards, after the pressure, there's a good chance that he's going to be almost full by the time you land that full combos, you know? I've gone for a little bit of pressure like this, and let's just pretend Johnny now gets hit by this, and I go for a full combo. Stryker's basically fully recovered, so if you think of it that way, it is a pretty worthwhile investment, because a lot of people are going to try and mash if they happen to actually not even get hit by the overhead. And yeah, I think it's pretty worthwhile to use these a little bit more now. And finally, the last move of Stryker's is this Arrest, which is still a kind of weak move, but because, you know, other versions of his moves were nerfed and you're not going to spam them as much, this does actually have a few applications that you might think about using, particularly in matchups that are hard for Rain. So things that can be quite difficult for Rain to deal with is anti-projectile stuff. So things like Rain's own water bubble is really annoying to fight against because it deletes all of his projectiles that he tries to throw at the opponent. Also, Jade's Glow from Chameleon or Sub-Zero's Ice Armour, all really annoying things that basically instantly counter Rain, or including Viltrumite stuns from Omni-Man. But this isn't a projectile, it's a physical strike that hits the opponent from full screen, and it's only 22 frames, which, if you don't know about Rain, it's a lot faster than any of his projectile hits. From full screen, basically all of his projectiles take 40 plus frames, 40 or more frames to hit the opponent. So something that is basically half of that is quite useful even if it doesn't do much. So it doesn't do much damage, it's not that plus. From full screen, you can't even really jail into anything except, you know, a mid, and that's not a jail, it's just hard for the opponent to avoid. So I suggest either just going for Weather God to take some chip damage, or throw a Whirlpool that doesn't actually hit the opponent. So maybe if they try to jump over a projectile or something and get towards you after being arrested, then they'll just accidentally dash or jump into that. So it's useful, particularly against people that think that they can just beat you outright when you're zoning. You can just catch them thinking that they're invincible, and yeah, it is surprisingly useful. The Restand is still not something I use too much, especially when we consider the other Oki that we were given, but since it is a cheaper in terms of time option that we can go for, of course we still have stuff like this. So dash up, stand 1, and then you can dash in and go for an overhead. You do have to kind of make sure you do the dash as fast and as far as possible so that you do actually hit the opponent, especially if you're trying to fake out going for the throw. You do have to make sure that you do quite a long dash, otherwise the throw will just completely whiff. But as you can see, even with the throw time there, Stryker has recovered a decent amount considering you used him at the end of a combo, so it is not as expensive as the grenades, so it might be something you use a little bit more. Particularly, once again, against characters who you really want to keep your turn against and go for more resets against, because you're, for some reason, really scared of them. May as well go for a reset. So, that's a summary of the 5 things that make Rain and Stryker strong together, and now, although these are things that they could do in the past, the weighting of which ones you do at certain times is going to be slightly different. The grenades are something you can use to get more damage, to try and kill your opponent and stuff, but it's not something you're going to be doing every time, otherwise you'll just have no Kameo meter, especially if you consider the fact that you can possibly, like, throw him out and then use him as Oki. That's going to take it takes about 18 seconds for one, so it's going to take you like 36 seconds for that to come back. That's basically an entire round. So you don't want to be using the grenades too often, which is why it's important to think about these other strengths that he has now, which include using pressure to get plus frames or interesting knockdowns that are really long that you can throw out whirlpools in, going for restands or using that from full screen, and yeah, just using his other moves. Particularly, think about the fact that if you use a long recovery move, it stays like that until it's fully recovered. So if I throw out Stryker and then I try to do this That's really not worth it, by the way, because it's still going to be this slow recovery. So you want to use this moves and then not use a grenade, because if you use them and then a grenade, then the fast cooldown time is completely useless. So make sure that you don't do that. That means that maybe your new game plan is that for the first half of the round, you just play a slightly different game. You don't use the grenades at all because you're just trying to, you know, make sure that you have Kameo meter when it gets closer to the end of the game and it gets a little more intense, and maybe when the life bars get low, that's when you want to start cracking out the ridiculously stupid stuff and start using, like, your grenade pressure, where you are good on block or on hit, because when your life gets low, you want to make sure that no matter what happens, you are at the advantage, you're either killing the opponent or you're safer plus. That's when using the grenades, I think, is going to become most important, for doing ridiculous, stupid stuff to win out the game, but for the rest of it, you're kind of just a generally stronger version of Rain. You have a faster tool that you can use while you're zoning, you have these interesting pressure options that are mix-ups, and when you feel like it, you can really cash out with the grenades. That's Rain and Stryker. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you online. Goodbye.